It all began with an image. Not a blurry photo from a backyard telescope, not a grainy screenshot from a late-night conspiracy forum, but an official photograph, captured and published by NASA itself. The date was October 2nd, 2025. On the vast ochre plains of Mars, the Perseverance rover, a marvel of human engineering, dutifully turned its upward-facing skycam towards the thin, butterscotch sky. At precisely 9:18 in the Martian morning, it saw something. Something so significant that NASA's own team, back on Earth, highlighted it with a stark green circle on their official multimedia page. There, against the faint Martian light, was a visitor. This was the first hint, a quiet prologue to a story that would soon grip the world. Because just 24 hours later, on October 3rd, humanity was poised for its most intimate encounter with a traveler from beyond our solar system. The interstellar object known as 3I, Atlas, was making its closest approach to Mars, and we were ready. It was an unprecedented moment in the history of exploration. 7 of our most advanced spacecraft, representing 4 different international space agencies, were in perfect alignment, a celestial orchestra of cameras, spectrometers, and sensors, all pointed at this single mysterious object. The Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, with its powerful HIRIS camera, the European Space Agency's Mars Express, and ExoMars Trace Gas Orbiter, NASA's long-serving Mars Odyssey, the ground-based eyes of the Perseverance rover itself, China's prolific Tianwen-1 orbiter, and the United Arab Emirates Hope orbiter. 7 silent witnesses, holding the technological gaze of an entire planet. They were there to capture the most detailed, high-resolution images of an interstellar wanderer ever taken. They were there to unlock its secrets. And then, after that perfect moment of observation, came the silence. A complete and deafening silence. For 4 days, the world waited. 96 hours ticked by. The space agencies, normally bustling with press releases, data dumps, and celebratory announcements, said nothing. NASA, an organization that has turned public engagement into an art form, was quiet. The China National Space Administration, a proud and powerful agency that has released over 14,000 images from its Mars mission, an agency that never misses an opportunity to showcase its incredible capabilities, released nothing. Not a single pixel. The United Arab Emirates, a nation that has championed transparency and international collaboration with its Hope mission, also remained silent. 4 days of nothing. Just think about that. In an age of instant information, where data flows from Mars to Earth in a constant stream, the pipeline suddenly ran dry. It was as if a curtain had been drawn across the solar system. Then, on October 7th, the curtain was partially lifted, but what was revealed only deepened the mystery. The European Space Agency finally broke the silence. They released a set of images, and the world leaned in, expecting a revelation. What we got was a fuzzy white dot. A series of frames, compiled into a short animation, showed a slightly indistinct point of light moving gracefully against a backdrop of distant stars. The official description from the European Space Agency was almost anticlimactic. A slightly fuzzy white dot. They explained that their Orbiter S camera was designed to photograph the bright surface of Mars from a few hundred kilometers away. Not a dim, faint object 30 million kilometers out in the blackness of space. Capturing it at all was a technical triumph, requiring long, 5-second exposures that pushed the instrument to its absolute limits. What we were seeing, they said, was not the object's solid nucleus, but its coma, the cloud of gas and dust boiling off its surface as it was heated by the sun. This, they assured us, was normal comet behavior. A comet was acting like a comet. It was exactly what you'd expect to see. But was it? Let's pause and really consider this. If the images were so normal, so unremarkable, so perfectly aligned with expectations, why the 4-day wait? And more importantly, if the European Space Agency's less powerful camera could produce images clear enough to publish, Why were the agencies with the best cameras, the highest resolution instruments, still silent? Why hasn't NASA released the images from the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter's HIRI's camera, an instrument so powerful it could have given us our clearest view ever of an interstellar object? Why hasn't China, which never hesitates to publish its achievements, shared anything from Tianwen-1? The European Space Agency showed us a fuzzy dot and told us we need weeks or months for a full analysis. What could the others have possibly seen that they can't show us at all? This release, instead of answering questions, posed a much more disturbing one. It established a baseline. It proved that observations were made and that the data could be shared. So what is stopping the others? The European Space Agency's announcement was a masterclass in careful, precise language. They confirmed the object was there. They confirmed it had a coma, a sign of normal cometary activity. But they were very careful about what they didn't say. They mentioned that their other orbiter, Mars Express, also tried to observe 3I Atlas, but the object has not yet revealed itself in those images because it was too faint. They are now painstakingly working to stack multiple images together, a digital process to amplify a faint signal from the background noise. But why go to all this trouble if the other images already confirmed it was just a normal comet? What are they looking for that they couldn't see in the first set of pictures? Even more telling was their statement on spectroscopy. Spectrometers are the instruments that can truly unveil the secrets of 3I Atlas. They don't just take pictures. They break down light into its chemical fingerprints, revealing the exact elements and compounds the object is made of. The European Space Agency aimed 3 different spectrometers at the object. Did they get the data? Do they know its chemical composition? Their official statement reads that it is uncertain whether the coma and tail were bright enough for spectral characterization. Uncertain. Not a no, but not a yes either. This is a critically important point. If they have that data, they know if the strange chemical signatures detected from Earth-based telescopes are present. They know if this object is made of the same stuff as the comets in our own solar system, or if it's made of something entirely different. And if they know, they are choosing not to tell us yet, hiding behind the word uncertain. So let's step back and look at the picture that's forming. On October 2nd, NASA's Perseverance rover captures an image of an object in the Martian sky, an image NASA itself highlights. On October 3rd, 7 of humanity's most advanced probes observe this object at its closest point, creating a treasure trove of invaluable data. For 4 days, a coordinated global silence from every major spacefaring power. Then, on October 7th, one agency releases the least detailed, most ambiguous images, showing a normal-looking comet, while simultaneously admitting they are still digging for more data, and are uncertain about the most critical chemical analysis. They conclude by saying a full report will take weeks, maybe months. This isn't the end of a mystery. It feels like the beginning of a carefully managed narrative. It feels like a story is being crafted. The question we should all be asking is this: if what the European Space Agency showed us is unremarkable enough to publish, what did the others see? What did the far more powerful eyes of NASA and China witness that was so remarkable, so unexpected, that it demands this level of silence, this level of caution, this level of coordinated secrecy? The question isn't just, what is 3I Atlas? Anymore. The question is, what did they see, and why aren't they telling us? That unsettling question, what did they see, hangs in the air, transforming this astronomical event into a global enigma. To even begin to fathom what might be hidden in that missing data, we need to understand the incredible power of the eyes that were watching. This wasn't a casual glance. It was a coordinated, deeply intentional act of observation by 7 of our most sophisticated robotic explorers. These are our proxies in the cosmos, our silent witnesses, and each one holds a piece of the truth. Let's journey to Mars and meet this fleet of observers. because their capabilities define the very nature of the secrets being kept. First, we have the undisputed champion of Martian imaging, NASA's Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter. Orbiting the red planet since 2005, this veteran spacecraft carries an instrument that is nothing short of a legend in planetary science, the HIRISE camera, the high-resolution imaging science experiment. On a typical day, HIRISE is busy capturing breathtakingly detailed images of the Martian surface, capable of resolving features as small as a dinner table from hundreds of kilometers up. Now, imagine turning that incredible power away from Mars and toward 3I Atlas, even at a distance of 30 million kilometers. The calculations are staggering. While it couldn't see the object's nucleus as a detailed shape, HIRISE should have delivered a resolution of approximately 30 kilometers per pixel. Now, that might not sound impressive at first, but you have to grasp the context. This would be, without exaggeration, the highest resolution image of an interstellar object ever captured in the entire history of human astronomy. Think about that for a moment. Every other visitor from another star system, like the enigmatic Oumuamua in 2017 or Comet Borisov in 2019, were captured only as they were leaving, as distant, fading points of light. We were always playing catch-up. But with 3I Atlas, we had been tracking it for months. We knew it was coming. We had the perfect shot with our most powerful camera at the perfect moment. So, where is that image? Where is that unprecedented, history-making photograph? The silence from the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter team is perhaps the most conspicuous of all. Next in our lineup are the European spacecraft, the ones that gave us our fuzzy white dot. The Mars Express, launched way back in 2003, is another seasoned explorer. Its primary camera, the high-resolution stereo camera, is designed for a very special purpose, to map the Martian surface in 3 dimensions. But a camera doesn't care what it's pointed at. Aimed at 3I Atlas, this instrument had the unique potential to do more than just take a flat picture. It could have created a 3-dimensional structural map of the comet's coma. Just imagine what that could reveal. We wouldn't just see a cloud of gas and dust. We would see its shape, its density, any strange asymmetries or patterns in the way material was erupting from its surface. Was it a uniform spherical cloud, as you'd expect from a simple, tumbling block of ice? Or was there structure? Were there jets or plumes that didn't align with simple solar heating? The European Space Agency's other craft, the ExoMars Trace Gas Orbiter, carries the instrument that could answer the biggest question of all. What is 3I Atlas made of? On board is an incredibly sensitive spectrometer named NOMAD. A spectrometer, as we touched on before, is a chemical detective. It was designed to sniff out the faintest trace gases in Mars's atmosphere, gases that might hint at geological or even biological activity. When you point an instrument with that level of sensitivity at a pristine sample of material from another star system, you are looking at the chemical building blocks of a world that formed billions of years ago, under conditions we can only dream of. Do they have that data? They told us it was uncertain, but an instrument designed to find a few molecules in an entire atmosphere was pointed directly at a dense cloud of gas. The probability that it saw something asterisk is incredibly high. Then there's NASA's other veteran, the Mars Odyssey Orbiter. Launched in 2001, it is one of the longest-serving spacecraft ever sent to another planet. Its key instrument for this event is called THEMIS, the Thermal Emission Imaging System. THEMIS doesn't see invisible light. It sees in infrared. It measures heat. For an object like 3I Atlas, this is a crucial piece of the puzzle. A normal comet is a cold, inert body whose surface is warmed by the sun. Its heat signature should be predictable, following the basic laws of physics. But what if there was something else going on? If 3I Atlas was experiencing any kind of unusual thermal activity, any internal energy source, any hotspots on its surface that shouldn't be there, THEMIS would have detected it. An anomalous heat signature would be a smoking gun, pointing to processes that go far beyond simple solar sublimation. The data from Thymus could tell us if 3 I-Atlas is a cold, dead rock or something far more active and complex. And once again, that data remains unpublished. Let's not forget our lone observer on the ground, the Perseverance rover. We know it saw something on October 2nd, but what did it see on October 3rd, at the moment of closest approach, when the object would have been at its brightest? Perseverance is a rolling geological laboratory, equipped with multiple high-tech cameras and even spectroscopy equipment. It had a direct, ground-based line of sight, a unique vantage point different from the orbiters above. We are told the raw image archive from Perseverance, which normally updates like clockwork, has a conspicuous gap for that specific Martian day. The automated data pipeline, a system that has reliably fed us thousands upon thousands of images from the Martian surface for years, seems to have been interrupted for this one critical event. One could argue the rover was busy with its primary mission, but we know this flyby was a coordinated, high-priority event. To believe that the science team simply forgot to task the rover to look up at the most significant celestial visitor of the century stretches credulity to its breaking point. And this brings us to the other major players in this unfolding drama. And this is where the mystery deepens into something that feels more like geopolitics than astronomy. China's Tianwen-1 orbiter has been a prolific source of Martian imagery. As we've noted, the China National Space Administration has released a staggering 14,000 images since its arrival in 2021. They are rightfully proud of their space program and use it to demonstrate their technological prowess on the world stage. For them to capture images of a historic interstellar object and not immediately publish them would be a complete violation of their established pattern of behavior. In fact, one would expect them to race to be the first to publish, to score a point in the competitive arena of space exploration. Their silence isn't just a lack of data, it's a statement. It's a conscious decision to withhold information, and it aligns perfectly with NASA's silence. The same is true for the United Arab Emirates Hope Orbiter, a mission defined by its spirit of openness and international scientific collaboration has also gone quiet. So here we stand. We have 7 witnesses. One capable of taking the most detailed picture in history. One that could map the object's structure in 3D. One that could analyze its chemical composition with exquisite sensitivity. One that could detect any anomalous heat. A ground observer with a unique perspective. And 2 more powerful orbiters from 2 proud spacefaring nations. All of them looked. All of them recorded data. And from all of them, we have either complete silence or a carefully worded, ambiguous preliminary report. Data doesn't just disappear. It exists on hard drives at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, on servers at the European Space Operations Center, and in archives in Beijing and Dubai. Somewhere, right now, scientists and officials are looking at images and readings that we are not being allowed to see. The only logical conclusion is that they all saw the same thing, something unexpected, something so significant that the normal rules of scientific competition and national pride were suspended in favor of a coordinated global silence. They are talking to each other. They are trying to understand what they've found before they tell the rest of us. The silence itself has become the story, and it points to a discovery far more profound than any fuzzy white dot. To comprehend the depth of this silence, we must understand that the world space agencies weren't looking at a complete unknown on October 3rd. Mystery of 3, I-Atlas didn't begin in those moments of close observation. It began months earlier, with calculations and observations made from Earth. The spacecraft at Mars were sent to get a closer look at a series of profound anomalies that had already left the astronomical community puzzled, and, in some circles, deeply unsettled. These weren't minor quirks. These were fundamental challenges to our understanding of what a natural interstellar object should look like and how it should behave. It's as if we were tracking a ghost, and the closer it got, the more solid and unexplainable its form became. And the most fundamental, most mathematically staggering of all these anomalies is its trajectory, its path. Imagine the solar system as a vast, flat disk like an old vinyl record. The sun sits at the center, and the planets, including Earth and Mars, orbit in concentric grooves on this disk. This flat plane is what astronomers call the ecliptic. Now, an object from interstellar space, a visitor with no connection to the formation of our solar system, could come from literally any direction. It could plunge down from above the record, or sweep up from below, or slice across at any random angle. The overwhelming majority of possible paths would completely miss this thin, crowded disk of planets. Yet, 3I Atlas is traveling almost perfectly aligned with our ecliptic plane, inclined at a mere 4.89 degrees. It's not just in our neighborhood. It's driving down the main highway. The statistical probability of an interstellar wanderer arriving with such a precise alignment, just by random chance, is about 1 in 500. Unlikely, but perhaps not impossible. But that is just the first in a series of cosmic coincidences that, when stacked together, begin to defy belief. Because 3I Atlas isn't just traveling along our plane. It crossed that plane at precisely the right moments in time and space to orchestrate two of the most scientifically interesting planetary encounters imaginable. On October 3, 2025, it passed within a breathtaking 29 million kilometers of Mars. Then, as it continues its journey, it is scheduled to pass within 54 million kilometers of the colossal gas giant Jupiter on March 16, 2026. Stop and think about what this requires. This isn't just about being on the right road. It's about arriving at two specific intersections at the exact moments two other cars are passing through. Mars and Jupiter are constantly moving, hurtling through space on their vast orbits around the Sun. For 3I Atlas to cross their paths when the planets are asterisk, actually their asterisk is a feat of timing, so precise it borders on the miraculous. The probability of this timing working out for both planets, on top of the initial plane alignment, the numbers become astronomical. When you multiply these independent probabilities, the odds against this trajectory, occurring by chance, plummet to something on the order of 1 in 200,000. 1 in 200,000. Let's try to wrap our minds around that number. If you bought a single lottery ticket, your odds of winning a major prize would be better. If you shuffled a standard deck of 52 cards and tried to deal yourself a specific sequence of 5 cards, you would likely succeed long before the universe would randomly produce a trajectory like this one. It's a statistical scream, a mathematical anomaly so profound that simply shrugging and calling it a coincidence begins to feel intellectually unsatisfying. It's like finding a single specific grain of sand on all the beaches of the world. It could happen by chance, but you'd be forgiven for suspecting someone placed it there. And this has led some brilliant minds, like the Harvard astrophysicist Avi Loeb, to ask a daring question. What if it wasn't chance? What if the path isn't a coincidence, but a destination? This leads to a hypothesis, and it is just a hypothesis, but one so elegant and disturbing it must be considered. It's called the transit survey cone theory. Imagine for a moment you are an astronomer in a distant star system, billions of years old. You are searching for life, for other worlds. How would you do it? You would likely use the same primary method we do, the transit method. You would point your telescopes at distant stars and watch for the telltale, tiny dip in brightness caused by a planet passing in front of it. It's how we've discovered thousands of exoplanets. But there's a catch. You can only see the planets that are perfectly aligned between you and their star. This means there is a very narrow cone of space extending from any given star from which its planets would be visible. If you are inside that cone, you can see the transits. If you are outside it, you see nothing. Now, apply this to our solar system. There is a specific cone of observation from which an alien civilization could see not just Earth, but Mars and Jupiter as well, all transiting our sun. They would know this solar system is special. They would know it's a prime target for investigation. And here is the mathematical punchline. Given the layout of our solar system, the very center of that optimal detection cone, the trajectory, you would use if you wanted to send a probe to investigate the system you had just discovered, is inclined at almost exactly 5 degrees to our ecliptic plane. 3. Atlas is inclined at 4.89 degrees. It is flying down the exact corridor that an intelligent civilization would use if they had detected us from afar and sent a probe to take a closer look. Is this proof? No, but it is a chillingly precise correlation. It provides a logical reason for a trajectory that otherwise seems mathematically impossible. It transforms the object's path from a random accident into a deliberate, targeted line of inquiry. So, as the 7 witnesses at Mars turned their eyes toward this object on October 3rd, they weren't just looking at a comet. They were looking at an object that was already an outlier, a statistical ghost that shouldn't exist. They were looking for confirmation, for clues that would either support the incredible hypothesis of intelligent origin or provide a natural explanation for its impossible journey. The trajectory is the thread that connects all the other anomalies. Because if the path itself seems engineered, if it appears to be a calculated, intentional route through our solar system, then every other strange characteristic of the object traveling upon it must be re-examined. It forces us to ask, what other clues has this traveler left in its wake? What happens when you look beyond the impossible path and begin to analyze the impossible nature of the object itself? The trajectory of 3I Atlas is a mathematical riddle, a 1 in a million path that whispers of intention. But mathematics, as mind-bending as it can be, is still abstract. It's a pattern of numbers. To find the true nature of this visitor, we must look at the object itself, at the very atoms it is shedding as it journeys through our solar system. If the trajectory is the ghostly outline, then the object's chemistry is its physical fingerprint. And it is here, in the cold, hard science of what 3I Atlas is made of, that we find what many astronomers are now calling the smoking gun. A piece of evidence so strange, so difficult to explain with natural processes, that it forces us to reconsider everything we thought we knew about comets. I'm talking about the baffling mystery of nickel without iron. To understand why this is such a profound anomaly, we need a quick lesson in cosmic creation. Where do heavy elements like nickel and iron come from? They are born in the most violent and spectacular events the universe has to offer, the death of massive stars. In the final furious moments of a star's life, it collapses and then explodes in a supernova, a cataclysm of such immense power that it forges new elements in its fiery heart. Carbon, oxygen, silicon, iron, and nickel, they are all created in these stellar furnaces. And here is the unshakable fundamental rule of this process. Nickel and iron are created together. They are forged in the same layers of a dying star, under the same titanic pressures. In every natural object we have ever studied, from the meteorites that fall to Earth, to the asteroids in our asteroid belt, to the hundreds of comets from our own solar system, wherever you find nickel, you find iron. The ratio might change a little, but they are cosmic twins, eternally bound by the laws of physics. Finding one without the other in nature would be like finding smoke without a fire, or a shadow without a source of light. It simply doesn't happen. Until it seems now. In the summer of 2025, long before the Mars flyby, astronomers at the European Southern Observatory aimed the awesome power of the Very Large Telescope in Chile at 3I Atlas. They weren't just taking a picture, they were performing spectroscopy. They passed the faint light from the object through an instrument that acts like a prism, splitting it into a rainbow-like spectrum. Woven into this spectrum are tiny dark or bright lines, a unique barcode that reveals the precise chemical elements present in the object's coma. And what they found was astonishing. They detected a strong, clear, unmistakable signature of nickel. Not a faint hint, but 22 distinct emission lines, a definitive presence. The object was clearly shedding nickel gas into its surrounding cloud. But then they looked for its cosmic twin. They looked for the barcode of iron, and they found nothing. Not a trace. Not a whisper. The instrument was more than sensitive enough to detect it if it were there. Yet the space where the iron signature should have been was completely, utterly blank. Now, this immediately presents a huge problem. How can a comet, whose surface is far colder than the melting point of any metal, be producing nickel asterisk gas asterisk in the first place? The surface of 3I Atlas, at that distance from the Sun, was frigid, not nearly hot enough to vaporize solid metal. The leading natural explanation is a clever bit of chemistry called the carbonyl channel. The idea is that the nickel atoms aren't in a pure metallic form on the surface. Instead, they're trapped inside other, more volatile compounds like nickel carbonyl. These compounds can turn to gas at very low temperatures, carrying the nickel atoms along with them, which are then released when sunlight breaks the compounds apart. It's a plausible theory, and it neatly explains the presence of nickel gas. But it utterly fails to explain the absence of iron. Why? Because iron forms almost identical carbonyl compounds. If this chemical process were happening, it should be releasing both nickel and iron. The chemistry isn't selective. It shouldn't be able to pick out one metal while leaving its twin behind. So the standard explanation doesn't solve the mystery. It only makes the absence of iron even more glaring. And the anomaly doesn't stop there. The astronomers who studied the data noticed something else that was deeply strange. The production of this iron-free nickel wasn't constant. It was accelerating at an incredible rate. Between their observations in July and August, as the object drew closer to the Sun, the amount of nickel gas it was spewing increased by a factor of 25. A 25-fold increase in just 1 month. This exponential ramp-up is far steeper than the gentle outgassing patterns of a typical comet. The scientific paper describing this phenomenon used the word extreme. This object was producing more nickel gas than any comet ever observed at a similar distance, and the rate was still climbing. So, what could possibly explain this? What process could be so selective that it releases vast and increasing quantities of nickel while leaving iron completely behind? While astronomers search for a novel, exotic natural explanation, there is another answer, and it is a deeply unsettling one. There is a process we know of that does exactly this. It's not a natural cosmic process. It's an industrial one. Here on Earth, when we want to produce highly pure nickel, we use a method called the Mont process, which is, chemically speaking, the exact same carbonyl process. We use carbon monoxide gas to strip nickel away from iron-rich ores, leaving the iron behind. It is the standard industrial method for manufacturing high-purity nickel for use in advanced metallurgy and manufacturing. The chemical signature of 3I, Atlas pure nickel emission, with no corresponding iron, is a perfect match for the signature of a nickel refinery. Let that sink in. This doesn't prove that 3I Atlas is an artificial object, but it means that the simplest explanation, the one that requires the fewest new scientific theories, is that its chemical signature is the result of a technological process we are familiar with, rather than a natural process we have never seen before. Now, bring this knowledge back to the silent fleet at Mars. The observations from the Very Large Telescope were made from over 300 million kilometers away. The spectrometers aboard the ExoMars Trace Gas Orbiter and other spacecraft on October 3rd were right there, just 30 million kilometers away. They got a look that was 10 times closer, 10 times more detailed. Their data would be 1,000 times more definitive. What did their spectrographs see? Did the signature of iron finally appear at close range, proving all of this was just a misunderstanding caused by distance? Or did the signature of industrially purified nickel become even clearer, even more undeniable? The answer to that question perhaps the most important question we could ask about this object exists. It is sitting on a server right now, and the fact that no one is willing to share it is what makes this smoldering chemical gun feel hot to the touch. The impossible trajectory tells us where 3I Atlas is going. The baffling chemistry hints at what it's made of. But to truly understand this visitor, we must also look at its form and its behavior. How does it look? How does it act as it moves through space? Just as a person's body language can tell you more than their words, an object's physical appearance can reveal secrets that its path and composition cannot. And when the Hubble Space Telescope, humanity's legendary eye in the sky, turned its gaze toward 3I Atlas, it saw something that, once again, defied easy explanation. It saw a comet that wasn't behaving like a comet. It saw a jet pointing the wrong way. On July 21, 2025, Hubble captured one of the first high-quality images of the inbound object. Astronomers were eager to see the classic signs of a comet waking up as it approached the sun. They expected to see a bright central nucleus, a growing, fuzzy coma, and perhaps the faint beginnings of a tail. A comet's tail is its most iconic feature, a beautiful, streaming banner of gas and dust. It is always, without exception, pushed away from the sun by the constant pressure of solar wind and radiation. No matter which way the comet is traveling, its tail streams behind it, pointing directly away from our star. But that's not what Hubble saw. Instead, it saw a distinct, narrow jet of material extending asterisk ahead asterisk of the object. It was pointing not away from the sun, but generally asterisk toward asterisk it. This wasn't a broad, diffuse cloud. It was a focused, almost collimated stream of material, described in the initial analysis as being 10 times longer than it was wide. Imagine a ship moving through water, but its wake is streaming out from its bow instead of its stern. It's a deeply counterintuitive image. For weeks following this observation, 3I Atlas failed to develop a proper rear-facing tail. It traveled through the solar system with this strange forward-pointing jet, a feature that looked less like the gentle sublimation of ice and more like a focused exhaust. Astronomers have a name for a phenomenon that can sometimes look like this anti-tail, which is an optical illusion caused by perspective when larger, heavier dust particles are left in the comet's own orbital path. But the narrow, focused nature of this jet, its 10-to-1 aspect ratio, and its early appearance before a proper tail had formed, made it stand out as highly unusual. It was another entry in a growing list of oddities. Eventually, by late August, 3I Atlas did begin to look more normal. A faint, conventional tail started to form, streaming away from the sun as expected. The object began to wear the familiar costume of a comet. But that initial wrong-way jet had been seen. The data was in the archive. It was a physical anomaly that added a new layer of complexity to the mystery. What could cause such a feature? Perhaps it was a pocket of extremely volatile ices that erupted in a focused manner due to the comet's rotation. Perhaps it was a structural feature, a fissure or a canyon on the nucleus that channeled the outgassing in a specific direction. These natural explanations are possible. But when you place this strange physical behavior in the context of the object's other anomalies, other possibilities begin to emerge. What if the jet wasn't a natural eruption? What if its focused, directional nature was a clue to its real function? In the context of the trajectory, a path so precise it seems targeted, a directional jet starts to look less like an anomaly and more like a tool. Could it be a form of course correction? A way to make tiny, precise adjustments to its flight path. This brings us to another major chemical anomaly, one that ties directly into the idea of propulsion. When the James Webb Space Telescope and the SPHERX Observatory analyzed the composition of the object's coma, they discovered that it was overwhelmingly dominated by carbon dioxide. The gas cloud surrounding 3I Atlas is composed of approximately 95% carbon dioxide and only 5% water. This is a dramatic reversal of what we see in comets from our own solar system, which are typically rich in water ice. Why is this significant? On one hand, it provides a perfectly natural explanation for some of the object's behavior. Carbon dioxide ice, what we know as dry ice, turns to gas at much colder temperatures than water ice. A carbon dioxide-rich comet would naturally wake up and become active much farther from the Sun, which is exactly what we observed with 3I Atlas. This unusual composition could simply be a reflection of where it was born, in a distant star system with different chemistry and different conditions for planetary formation. This is the mainstream and most likely scientific explanation. But again, we must look at the data through the lens of all the other anomalies. Carbon dioxide isn't just a volatile ice. It is also an excellent propellant. For decades, engineers have used cold gas thrusters jets of compressed gas to maneuver spacecraft. Carbon dioxide is a prime candidate for such systems because it's stable, easy to store as a solid, and provides efficient thrust when it sublimates into a gas. So we are faced with two competing interpretations of the same facts. Is 3I Atlas a natural comet whose unique carbon dioxide composition explains its early activity? Or are we looking at a highly advanced probe, a hybrid stealth craft, camouflaged as a comet, using its vast reserves of carbon dioxide as propellant for maneuvering thrusters? A craft that could, for instance, fire a focused, forward-facing jet to make a subtle but critical adjustment to its trajectory as it homes in on its target. The composition alone doesn't provide an answer, but when you combine the impossible trajectory, the industrial chemical signature of its nickel, the wrong-way jet, and a primary composition that happens to be an ideal propellant, the weight of coincidence becomes immense. The pattern becomes harder and harder to ignore. This is what makes the missing data from October 3rd so critical. The close-up images from HIRISE could have resolved the jet's origin point on the nucleus. Was it a wide, messy eruption from a fissure, or a clean, focused stream from a specific point that looks suspiciously like a nozzle? The thermal data from Thymus could have told us if the jet was a cold, passive sublimation, or if it had a heat signature associated with a propulsion system. Each of our 7 witnesses holds a key to unlocking this puzzle, to determining whether we are seeing a strange natural object or a masterpiece of interstellar engineering. And their continued silence on the object's physical appearance only makes that early Hubble image, with its ghostly, wrong-way jet, loom ever larger in our collective imagination. We have followed a cosmic breadcrumb trail, a trail that begins with a trajectory so improbable it seems designed, a 1-in-a-million shot through the heart of our solar system. A trail that leads to a chemical signature that mirrors an industrial process more closely than any known natural one. A trail marked by strange directional jets and a composition that doubles as a perfect propellant. Each piece of evidence, taken alone, could perhaps be dismissed as a fluke, an oddity, a statistical outlier. But when you begin to lay these pieces side by side, a pattern emerges. The outline of something profound begins to take shape in the darkness between the stars. And the trail isn't finished. There are more clues, whispers carried on waves of light and echoes from a ghost in our own machine, that make the pattern even harder to dismiss as mere chance. Let's talk about the light itself. Not just its chemical signature, but its physical properties. When sunlight travels through space and bounces off an object, it changes. The reflected light waves can become aligned in a particular direction, a property known as polarization. It's the same principle behind polarized sunglasses, which filter out the horizontally aligned glare from a road or water surface, allowing you to see more clearly. By studying the polarization of light reflecting off a comet or asteroid, scientists can learn an incredible amount about the surface it bounced off of, its texture, its structure, and the nature of the tiny dust grains in its coma. And when astronomers measured the light from 3I Atlas, they found something, yet again, completely off the charts. It exhibited what is described in the scientific literature as extreme negative polarization. Now, all comets polarize light to some degree, but the measurements from 3I Atlas were far outside the normal range, significantly outside. This extreme reading suggests that the physical properties of the dust surrounding the object are unlike anything we have ever seen. Are the dust grains an unusual shape? Do they have a bizarre mineral composition? Are they aligned in a specific, non-random way? Any of these could be true. The object's origin in a distant alien star system, born from a different stellar nursery, could have endowed it with minerals and structures that are simply foreign to our corner of the galaxy. That is a perfectly valid natural explanation. But as with every other anomaly, there is an alternative interpretation that fits the emerging pattern. Certain types of artificially manufactured materials, especially surfaces engineered with specific microstructures, are known to produce strong and unusual polarization effects. Once again, we are left at a fork in the road. Is this a geological curiosity from a faraway world, or a technological fingerprint, an unintentional signal carried on the very light that reflects off its skin? On its own, it's a puzzle. Combined with everything else, it's another unsettling data point. But the most chilling piece of the puzzle isn't a new discovery. It's a ghost from our past, an echo from a time before most of us were born, a mystery that has haunted the search for extraterrestrial intelligence for nearly half a century. Let's travel back in time to August 15, 1977. At the Big Ear Radio Telescope in Ohio, a volunteer astronomer named Jerry Emmon was reviewing data from the night before. The telescope was sweeping the skies, listening for any signals from the cosmos that stood out from the background hiss of the universe. Suddenly, he saw it. A powerful, narrow-band radio signal, sharp and clear as a bell, blasting out at a frequency of 1,420 megahertz, the precise frequency of hydrogen, the most common element in the universe. It was a signal that many scientists believed an intelligent civilization would use to announce its presence. It lasted for a full 72 seconds as the telescope swept past, and it was so strong, so perfectly artificial in its appearance, that Emmons circled the data on the printout and wrote one word in the margin. Wow! The wow signal became legendary, and it was never, ever detected again. It was a one-time cosmic shout, and its origin remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in modern science. It came from the direction of the constellation Sagittarius, a dense, star-rich region toward the center of our galaxy. Now, hold that thought. Let's return to 2025. With the precise trajectory of 3I Atlas now known, astronomers can do something remarkable. They can rewind its journey. They can trace its path backward through space, calculating exactly where it was at any point in the past. So they ask the question, where was 3I Atlas on August 15, 1977? The answer is enough to send a shiver down your spine. On that exact day, 3I Atlas was located in the sky just a handful of degrees away from the origin point of the WOW signal. The alignment isn't perfect, but it is incredibly close. The probability of such a close alignment between the path of a random interstellar object and the location of this legendary, unexplained signal being a mere coincidence is less than 1%. Could 3I Atlas have been the source of the WOW signal? The physics are plausible. For it to produce a signal that's strong from its position at the time, it would have required a transmitter with the power output of a large nuclear reactor on Earth. A tremendous amount of energy, but not an impossible one for a civilization capable of interstellar travel. Furthermore, the signal had a slight blue shift, meaning its frequency was shifted higher, indicating that the source was moving asterisk toward asterisk us at high speed, which perfectly matches the trajectory of 3I Atlas. It raises a breathtaking possibility. What if the signal wasn't a message? What if it was a ping? A powerful radar pulse from a reconnaissance probe, sweeping through star systems to search for planets. A pulse that happened to sweep across Earth for 72 seconds. If that probe got a return signal, an echo from our world, confirming a habitable planet, it might have then initiated a final course correction, a final burn to bring it in for a closer look. The 48 years between 1977 and 2025 would be the travel time for that final leg of the journey. So here we stand with a complete set of anomalies. A trajectory that seems targeted. A forward jet that looks like propulsion. A composition that acts like propellant. A chemical signature that mirrors industry. A light polarization that hints at artificiality. And a path that aligns with the most famous suspected alien signal in history. One of these things is an anomaly. Two is a coincidence. But what do you call seven? When does a series of coincidences become a pattern? And when does that pattern become evidence? That is the question that the scientists analyzing the data from October 3rd are wrestling with, in secret right now. And it's why their silence is the loudest sound in the world. The pattern is now laid bare. 7 anomalies, 7 threads of evidence, each strange on its own, but woven together, they form a tapestry of profound and unsettling questions. We have followed the clues this visitor has left in its wake, from its impossible path to the ghostly echo of the wow signal. But the past is prologue. The most critical, most revealing moment of this entire celestial encounter is still to come. There is a date circled on the calendars of astronomers and space agencies around the globe, a date that represents a hidden moment of truth. October 29th, 2025. In just a few short weeks, 3I Atlas will reach perihelion, its closest approach to the Sun. This is the moment of maximum drama for any comet. As it plunges deeper into the solar system, the intensity of the Sun's radiation increases exponentially. The surface, which was once frozen and dormant in the cold depths of interstellar space, is now being relentlessly baked by the energy of a star. At perihelion, this assault reaches its peak. For 3I Atlas, its surface will be bombarded by approximately 12 gigawatts of raw solar power. That's the equivalent of the energy output of 12 large nuclear power plants, all focused on an object that may only be a few kilometers across. The thermal stress is unimaginable. This is the moment when a comet truly reveals its nature. The ices locked within it will sublimate with explosive force, erupting into space and feeding its coma and tail. If the object is structurally weak, a loose rubble pile of ice and rock, the thermal stresses could be enough to tear it apart entirely, causing it to fragment and disintegrate. If it's a natural comet, we should expect a spectacular show, a dramatic brightening, a massive increase in outgassing, and the formation of a magnificent, fully developed tail. We've seen it happen countless times with comets from our own solar system. Perihelion is the trial by fire. But here is the cosmic irony, the source of immense frustration for every scientist and stargazer on Earth. At this exact moment of peak activity, this critical juncture when 3I Atlas will either perform as expected or reveal its true, anomalous nature, it will be completely invisible to us. The geometry of the orbits is unavoidable. From our perspective on Earth, the object will pass directly behind the Sun. Our star, the very source of the energy that is triggering this transformation, will be in the way, blocking our view completely. We will be blind. Every telescope on Earth, and even those in orbit around it, like Hubble and the James Webb Space Telescope, will be unable to see it, their sensitive optics overwhelmed by the blinding glare of the Sun. It's a critical gap in our observational timeline, a locked room in the middle of our cosmic mystery. Why is this moment so important? Because if 3I Atlas is something more than a simple comet, perihelion is not a moment of danger. It is a moment of opportunity. In the world of orbital mechanics, there is a powerful technique known as the Oberth effect. It is a fundamental principle that spacecraft use to make major changes to their orbits with maximum fuel efficiency. The concept is simple. A rocket engine is at its most effective when the spacecraft is moving at its fastest. And where is an object in our solar system moving at its absolute fastest? At perihelion, when it's deep within the sun's powerful gravity well. If you wanted to change your trajectory, if you wanted to slow down and allow yourself to be captured by the sun, says gravity, instead of flying back out into interstellar space, perihelion is the one perfect moment to do it. You would fire your engines in a retrograde burn, slowing yourself down just enough to shift from a hyperbolic escape trajectory to a stable, elliptical orbit. You would choose to stay. Now, consider the implications. If 3I Atlas were a probe, and its mission was to enter and remain in our solar system for long-term observation, this is exactly what it would do. And thanks to the orbital mechanics, it would perform this critical, revealing maneuver while perfectly hidden from our sight behind the sun. The intense radiation and thermal environment would provide the perfect cover, masking any heat signature or propulsion plume from its engines. It is the ultimate Trojan horse scenario. An object disguised as a harmless comet travels into the heart of our system, waits until it is in the one place no one can watch it, and then executes a maneuver that reveals its true purpose. It could shed its cometary disguise, deploy smaller probes, and change its destiny, all while we on Earth are completely oblivious, waiting for it to reappear on the other side. This is not wild fantasy. This is physics. And the fact that the object's trajectory brings it to this perfectly timed, perfectly hidden moment of opportunity is, for some, the most suspicious anomaly of all. Most astronomers would, of course, argue that this is highly unlikely. The most probable outcome is that 3I Atlas will behave exactly as a comet should. It will survive its fiery encounter, perhaps a little battered, and re-emerge from behind the sun in late November, continuing on its path back to the stars. When our telescopes pick it up again, they will see a normal, if somewhat unusual, comet. But the possibility, however remote, that it might not, is what keeps people awake at night. The fact that we cannot observe this critical transformation bothers people. It bothers them enough that observatories around the world are preparing for the Object S reemergence, with an intensity normally reserved for major cosmic events. They are coordinating, preparing their instruments, ready to capture the very first photons of light from the object the moment it clears the sun's glare. Because here is the uncomfortable truth. We will have the before date everything we've gathered up to October 29th, and we will have the after data everything we gather from late November onwards. But we will have no during. If 3I Atlas goes behind the sun, looking like one thing and comes out looking like something else, if its trajectory has changed, if its chemical signature is different, if it is suddenly accompanied by smaller objects that weren't there before, we will know that something profound happened in that hidden moment. We will have definitive proof of a transformation, but we will have missed the event itself. We will be left to wonder what exactly took place in those hidden hours behind the blinding curtain of the sun. And that is why the data from October 3rd, the close-up images we still haven't seen, are so tantalizing. They represent our last, best look at the object before it entered the locked room. They may hold the final clues that could tell us what to expect when the door finally opens again. So here we stand on the precipice of a hidden truth, waiting. We are waiting for 3I Atlas to complete its silent, invisible passage behind the sun. And in this period of waiting, of profound uncertainty, the human mind does what it does best. It tries to make sense of the impossible. The coordinated silence from the world space agencies has created a vacuum, and into that vacuum have rushed the most extraordinary ideas. These are not just wild guesses. They are structured hypotheses, theories born from the 7 baffling anomalies we have followed. Each theory is a doorway, and behind each one lies a completely different version of our reality. The question is, which door does the evidence unlock? Let's walk down the corridor and examine these 4 possibilities, from the mundane to the world-altering. The first door is the one most scientists would prefer to open. It is labeled Natural Comet with Exotic Chemistry. This is the theory of scientific conservatism, the one that requires the fewest leaps of faith. In this version of reality, 3I Atlas is exactly what it appears to be: a comet. Just a comet. It is a chunk of ice, rock, and frozen gas that formed in another star system billions of years ago, was ejected by a gravitational nudge, and has been wandering the interstellar void ever since. Its impossible trajectory is a fluke, a 1 in a million statistical coincidence that, while improbable, is not impossible in a galaxy with hundreds of billions of stars. Its strange chemistry, the dominance of carbon dioxide, the signature of nickel without iron, the extreme polarization of its light, is simply a reflection of its alien birthplace. It was born in a different stellar nursery, perhaps in the Milky Way's thick disk, a region of older stars with a different chemical makeup than our own sun. The conditions there created a comet with a composition we have never seen before. It is strange, it is puzzling, it is a fantastic opportunity for science, but it is not intelligent. It is not technological. It is simply nature, in all its vast and surprising diversity. This theory has the powerful advantage of not requiring any extraordinary claims. Its only weakness is that it must rely on an ever-growing list of coincidences and first-time-ever observations, all happening in one single object. The second door leads us into a much deeper, more profound past. Let's call it the ancient artifact. This theory proposes that 3I Atlas is not a natural object, but is, in fact, incredibly, unimaginably old technology. It could be a probe, a spacecraft launched by a civilization that may have lived and died billions of years before our sun even ignited. Remember, the analysis suggests this object could be older than our entire solar system. To put that in perspective, it could have been constructed when the universe was less than half its current age, when the atoms that would one day form Earth were still scattered across clouds of interstellar dust. What would be its purpose? Perhaps it is a vast, automated observational probe, a galactic archivist sent out on a multi-billion-year mission to travel the galaxy and record cosmic history. Perhaps it lies dormant for eons, only powering up when it encounters something of interest, like a star system showing the chemical signs of life. Or perhaps, in a more poetic sense, it is a message in a bottle, thrown into the cosmic ocean by a long-vanished civilization, an interstellar ark carrying not living beings, but information, knowledge, the preserved legacy of a people who knew they were dying and wanted some part of themselves to survive. If this is true, we are not being visited. We are being graced by a relic, a piece of galactic history of immeasurable value. The third door is more immediate, more purposeful, and for some, more unnerving. This is the active reconnaissance mission. This theory is similar to the last, but it discards the idea of an ancient, drifting relic. Instead, it proposes that 3I Atlas was sent here deliberately, and relatively recently, by a living, active civilization. This is the theory that best fits the impossible trajectory. The object isn't just wandering, it is navigating. It is following a path so perfectly aligned to observe Mars and Jupiter that it feels like a planned itinerary. It aligns with the ghost of the WOW signal, suggesting a probe that pinged our system in 1977 and has spent the last half-century making its final approach. Its retrograde orbit, moving against the flow of the planets, is even tactically advantageous, allowing it to deploy smaller subprobes that could intercept worlds like Earth with minimal energy. This wouldn't be a hostile act, necessarily, but a purely observational one. A civilization is conducting a galactic survey, and we are simply one of the points of interest on their map. This theory is perhaps the most unsettling because it changes our status in the universe. We would no longer be the sole, lonely intelligence looking out at the cosmos. We would be a subject of observation, a specimen in someone else's laboratory. Finally, we come to the fourth door. This theory is perhaps the most creative and the most elegant because it solves the central paradox of 3I Atlas. How can something look so much like a comet and yet behave so anomalously? This is the theory of the hybrid stealth craft. The idea is as brilliant as it is simple. You don't build an obviously artificial spacecraft. You find a natural object, a comet or an asteroid, and you hollow it out. You use the outer shell of rock and ice as the perfect camouflage, while hiding your true technology deep inside. From any telescope, it looks like a comet. It even has a coma, because you are deliberately venting gases to maintain the illusion. It has outgassing patterns that seem natural, because you are engineering them to appear that way. But within this natural-looking shell is a machine with a purpose. This theory explains everything. It explains why the object has both comet-like behaviors and anomalies that defy the comet model. It's a technological core wrapped in a natural exterior. It is the perfect disguise for interstellar travel, allowing a probe to pass through a potentially wary solar system without raising alarm. It is a level of engineering so advanced it is almost indistinguishable from nature itself. A natural anomaly, an ancient relic, an active surveyor, or a camouflaged machine. These are the 4 doors. And somewhere in the quiet, secure data centers of NASA, the European Space Agency, and the China National Space Administration, the people who have seen the close-up data from October 3rd are trying to figure out which key fits which lock. Or perhaps, and this is the thought that keeps the mystery alive, they have discovered that none of these keys work, and that the truth lies behind a 5th door, one that no one had ever imagined existed. A natural anomaly, an ancient relic, an active surveyor, or a camouflaged machine. These 4 doors represent the very edge of our understanding, the boundary between a known, predictable universe and one that is infinitely more complex and mysterious than we have ever allowed ourselves to imagine. But for now, they remain just theories, tantalizing possibilities born from a pattern of deeply strange evidence. The real answer, the key that unlocks one of those doors, is not a matter of speculation. It exists. It is a tangible thing, a stream of binary code, of images and telemetry, currently held under the tightest of wraps by the very organizations we built to explore the cosmos for us. And their collective decision to withhold that key has become the most powerful piece of evidence of all. Let's be very clear about what this silence means. This is not a simple data processing delay. This is not a bureaucratic hiccup. This is an unprecedented, coordinated decision among multiple, often competing, international space programs to not release groundbreaking data about the most significant interstellar object ever encountered. To understand how unnatural this is, you need to understand the relationship, particularly between NASA and the China National Space Administration. They are not collaborators. They are competitors. U.S. law, through the Wolf Amendment, severely restricts NASA from cooperating or sharing data with its Chinese counterparts. They operate in a state of fierce, competitive pride. When one agency achieves something, the other races to match or exceed it. It is a global space race, played out in slow motion on the plains of Mars and in the vastness of the solar system. So when these 2 great rivals, along with the European Space Agency and the UAE, all go silent about the same event at the same time, it is not competition. It is coordination. It signifies that something was discovered that was so profound, so paradigm-shifting, that it transcended national pride and geopolitical rivalry. It means that phone calls were made, that encrypted messages were exchanged between continents, and that an agreement was reached. Nothing gets released until we all understand what we are looking at and agree on how to present it to the world. These are not the actions you take for a weird rock. These are the actions you take when you discover something that will change the course of human history. The deafening silence from these agencies is, in itself, the loudest statement they could possibly make. But the story of 3I Atlas is not over. Even if these agencies choose to keep the October 3rd data locked away, our encounter with this object has more chapters yet to be written. The narrative now shifts from the past to the future, to our last, best hopes of getting an unvarnished look at the truth. The first of these moments will come in late November, right after 3I Atlas reemerges from its hidden passage behind the Sun. At that time, the European Space Agency's JUICE spacecraft, the Jupiter Icy Moons Explorer, currently on its long journey to the outer solar system, will have its instruments trained on the object. This observation is absolutely critical. JUICE will be the first witness to see what 3I Atlas has become asterisk after asterisk perihelion. It will be our first chance to see if it changed, if it maneuvered, if it survived its trial by fire as expected. But in a twist that only adds to the agonizing suspense, JUIC is currently in a part of its orbit that makes communication with Earth difficult. The invaluable data it collects in November will not be transmitted back to us until February of 2026. 4 more months of waiting. 4 more months of wondering what our robotic scout saw in the dark. And then there is one final, tantalizing possibility. A chance for the ultimate close-up. In March of 2026, 3I Atlas will pass within 54 million kilometers of Jupiter. Orbiting that gas giant right now is NASA's Juno spacecraft, a probe that has revolutionized our understanding of the planet's atmosphere and magnetic field. Juno has fuel. It has functioning instruments. And with a carefully calculated trajectory change, it could be redirected from its orbit around Jupiter to perform a close flyby of 3I Atlas, potentially at a distance of just 25 million kilometers. That is even closer than the Mars encounter. It would be our last and best chance to get definitive, high-resolution images and spectroscopic data that could finally answer all of our questions. But there's a problem. That maneuver, that crucial decision to redirect the spacecraft, has not yet been approved by NASA. With the agency paralyzed by the government shutdown, with thousands of employees furloughed, that decision is currently frozen in bureaucratic limbo. Think about what that means. We have 7 witnesses from the October 3rd flyby whose testimony is being withheld. We have a future witness in JUICE whose report will be delayed for months. And we have a final potential witness in Juno whose mission to get the ultimate answer may never even be approved. The truth is out there, but it is being held back, delayed, and is now at risk of being missed entirely. We are caught in a cosmic waiting game, armed with a pattern of baffling clues from the past, staring into a future of profound uncertainty. And every day that the silence from the 7 witnesses continues, the more urgent the question becomes. What did they see on October 3rd that they are so afraid to show us? And so, we wait. We wait in a silence that feels heavier and more charged than any sound. We are suspended in a great cosmic waiting room, staring at a locked door, knowing that behind it lies an answer that will irrevocably shape the future of our species. The question that has echoed through this entire journey, what did they see on October 3rd, is no longer just a scientific inquiry. It has become the defining question of our time. And as we wait for the silence to break, we must confront the most difficult truth of all. The final answer, whatever it turns out to be, may tell us less about the visitor and more about ourselves. We have traveled an extraordinary path together. It began with a single, highlighted dot in the thin Martian sky and spiraled out into a grand detective story written across the solar system. We unraveled the impossible mathematics of a trajectory that seems to defy chance. We peered into the heart of its chemistry and found the fingerprint of a process that looks more like industry than nature. We watched it behave in ways that challenged the very definition of a comet, with its strange forward-facing jets and a composition that is also a perfect propellant. We followed its ghost trail back in time and found it aligned with the most famous, tantalizing, and unexplained signal in our search for intelligence. We have followed the evidence, and every clue, every anomaly, has led us to this single world-altering crossroads. The final truth about 3I Atlas will inevitably lead us down one of two roads. Imagine for a moment that the silence finally breaks, and the world space agencies present a unified, definitive conclusion. The first road is the road of sublime nature. On this path, they show us the data, and it is conclusive. The nickel signature was an illusion created by exotic, but natural, compounds. The trajectory was a breathtaking statistical fluke, a winning lottery ticket in a cosmic game of chance. The jet was a normal, if unusual, outgassing event. They declare, with certainty, that 3I Atlas is simply the strangest, most wonderful natural comet we have ever had the privilege to witness. If this is the answer, is it a disappointment? Absolutely not. In fact, it would be a profound victory for science. It would mean that the universe is infinitely more creative, more diverse, and more surprising than our models ever predicted. It would mean that our definition of normal was laughably narrow. It would open up entirely new fields of astrophysics and chemistry, forcing us to reimagine how star systems form and what wonders they can produce. To find that nature, on its own, can create an object so perfectly strange would be, in its own way, as awe-inspiring as finding life. But then there is the other road, the road that leads to a new Genesis. On this path, the silence breaks with a statement that changes human history forever. They present the data, the close-up images, the thermal scans, the unambiguous spectra, and the conclusion is inescapable. The trajectory was deliberate. The chemistry is artificial. The object is a probe, a machine, a piece of technology so advanced it is almost indistinguishable from a natural object. If this is the answer, then the 21st century will be remembered for one thing above all else. It was the century we learned we were not alone. The great, lonely silence of the cosmos that we have been shouting into for 100 years will have been answered, not with a faint radio whisper, but with a physical visitor arriving on our doorstep. This discovery would fundamentally realign our species. The divisions that have defined our history, nation against nation, culture against culture, would suddenly seem so small, so trivial, in the face of the shared universal context. We would no longer be humanity of Earth. We would simply be humanity, one intelligence among an unknown number of others in a vast, ancient, and populated galaxy. It is a terrifying, exhilarating, and humbling thought. It would be the end of our cosmic childhood. But here is the ultimate reflection, the truth that sits at the very center of this mystery. Regardless of which road we are ultimately forced to travel, the journey itself has already changed us. The encounter with 3I Atlas and the agonizing silence that surrounds it has acted as a great cosmic mirror. It has forced us, as a global civilization, to look up from our small, terrestrial concerns and contemplate the biggest questions we can possibly ask. Who are we? Where did we come from? Are we, in this boundless ocean of stars, truly and utterly alone? For a few brief, intense months, the entire world has been united in this shared sense of wonder and suspense. We have become a planet of astronomers, of detectives, of philosophers, all staring at the same clues and asking the same questions. This event has revealed both the breathtaking power of our science and its profound limitations. We have built machines of incredible genius, robotic explorers that can act as our eyes and ears hundreds of millions of kilometers away. Yet all that technology has brought us to a point where we are left with only silence and speculation. It has exposed our deepest hopes and our most primal fears about the universe. The desire for 3I Atlas to be a probe, the hope that we might finally meet another intelligence, is born from our deep-seated need to connect, to know that we are not a cosmic accident. The fear that it might be a probe is born from our history, from our understanding that the meeting of two different civilizations has rarely been peaceful. In the end, the story of 3I Atlas is not just about a mysterious visitor from the stars. It is the story of humanity at a crossroads, staring into the great unknown and seeing our own reflection in the darkness. The silence from those who know the truth will, eventually, have to break. The data will be revealed. One of those doors will be opened. But the real challenge will not be in accepting the answer. The real challenge will be in deciding what we do next. The question is no longer just, what is 3I Atlas? The question is, who are we now that we have seen it? The universe has thrown a riddle into our backyard, and in solving it, we may just discover ourselves. The final frontier is not out there. It is within us. And the journey is just beginning.